All right. So we'll spend the last 20 minutes of class talking about contemporary old time music and dance traditions and just showing how they connect to some of these earlier practices we talked about. So, as mentioned before, in the 1920s, old time music was used as a way to refer to early country musicians in a less offensive way than hillbilly music. Today, you generally have the term old time music and old time dance used by preservationists and different folklorists and activists who are trying to protect the string band music tradition and trying to pass it down so it doesn't fade away into oblivion. And so, generally, when these practitioners, these preservationists and folklorists and such, when they're engaging with this kind of old time music tradition, a lot of times they're doing it because they're very similar to Bob Dylan and Joan Baez. They're looking for simplicity, right, in their modernist society and within the capitalist framework, and they're looking for a sense of community, right? So these are some of the values and goals people are searching for. So here are some old time music and dance characteristics. Generally, it's a very participatory style of music and dance, and it really ends up being a basis for an alternative community, meaning that it's not necessarily part of the dominant mainstream culture, but it's kind of its own subgrouping, an alternative grouping that people can be a part of. And generally, um, the old time music community is one that welcomes everybody from all backgrounds. However, if you look at this community, it is mostly white and middle class. So it does claim to welcome everybody, but there are parts of it that are still relatively exclusionary, where there are some barriers to enter for people. And to just dig in a little bit more with the participatory nature of old time music making, what you'll generally see is this wide range of performance roles, right? Because you have some people who've been dancing and playing old time music for 2 weeks, and then you have some people who have been doing it for 20 years. So there's usually a large range of roles, people who are more experienced um usually take up leadership roles. They'll guide new people and teach them the dances and the songs. And there's caller roles, meaning that main person who calls out the commands and guides everybody through the dance motions. That's probably the most experienced role you can have, because you really need to know what you're doing to guide all different groups of people, experienced folks, new folks, less experienced folks, through the music and dance practice. Generally, the music is very cyclical, meaning you'll hear the same parts of music happen over and over again. But what's cool about old time music is that there is room for a great deal of variation, right? So the musicians themselves don't get bored. They don't have to fiddle the same thing over and over again. And so, because of the cyclical nature, you'll generally hear the same sections of music repeating over and over again. And just remember that that's what these letters represent, right? So, the music in these A sections is the same. The B section music is a little different. The C section music is a little different. All right, so let's take a little listen here, and we'll listen to the caller as she gives the commands, right? And she'll say, long lines forward and back, ladies chain, balance the ring, twirl, and these are the types of dances and movements that everybody has to learn. And then you'll have the musicians on the side as well too. So this is a good representation of everyday old time music and dance practice happening.
Long lines forward, ladies chain across, bring it forward and you balance it now. Slide to the right, balance, spin to the right, and you balance. Pass your partner by the right, pass your neighbor by the left. Now swing and your neighbor swing. Face across, circle to the left, 3 places around, and your partner swing. Long lines forward, and the ladies you chain. And you balance, slide to the right, spin to the right, balance, cross, trail, pass right, pass left, now swing with the next. Circle to the left, and your partner swing.
I'm going to skip forward so you can see the musicians a little bit and then all the people dancing here. Right? And so part of what makes this type of music practice so great is that it's a way of connecting with so many different things. You can connect with a certain place or region, right? You can connect with a sense of history and a past and a lineage, right? Oh, my grandparents used to do this, or people generations down from me used to do this, or just with other people. Look at how all those people were moving and sounding together. That's a really powerful bond. I think I had a knee replacement. Yeah, there was one woman talking in there like really loudly. Yeah. Oh man, that was really funny. But notice how it is really its own thing, right? It's not necessarily like it was just this readoption of something completely old. It's looking to the past, drawing from it, and adopting certain values and practices, but making it your own style. Like someone had brought up the singing style and how distinctive that was, and yeah, it's not the same melodic singing we heard with Barbary Allen, right? But it has connections to that, and that's just a good example of taking something, adopting it, right? Not just simply recopying it and just redoing it completely, but adopting a style. So these are some of the positive attributes of this old time participatory music making, is that it can be about connection, people feeling and being together. Some other problems though, right? This particular kind of music community and essentially a constructed tradition like this is, a lot of it is steeped in romanticism, right? A certain romanticism of the past, right? Of what the good old days were like. And a certain exoticism of musical styles and cultural practices. And some things you'll notice, right? There's a very romantic notion of rural country life that hides, Appalachian culture, which was an important part of early folk music, and also the African American histories and other cultural histories that we talked about earlier, right? Notice how this community is very white, very middle class, and so it's a very romanticized notion of what old time music and dance is. And that's part of the reason why I always go through the lineage, so you can see how complex the heritage is. But that very complex and nuanced heritage often gets, whitewashed and simplified. So it can be about this beautiful, simple community, rural life, right? But it's a lot more complicated than that.